Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Chats with Chaudhry. I hope you're safe and well. I'm delighted today to be joined by Richard Johnson, who is President and CEO of the Parental Drug Association. And we're actually following up from a conversation Rich and I had 6 months ago. In fact, it was in July, where we were talking about the pandemic and how the market was adapting. So, Richard, lovely to see you again after such a long time.
It's good to see you.
Well, I hope you're well. And for last time, we were just discussing this before we came on air. You've actually changed. You've grown a coronavirus beard then.
Yes, that's true, as have many others, I might point out. Yeah.
Well, it's lovely to see you again. Before we start talking about how things have changed, for those who are not familiar with the PDA, and I always do this for every interview because there are going to be people watching this who may not be familiar, could you just give a quick overview of the PDA and also your role within it?
Okay. Well, in fact, this is our 75th anniversary this year for PDA.
Congratulations.
Which is a not-for-profit organization focused on pharmaceutical manufacturing. We are an individual member-based organization. We have members all around the world who in some way or another are involved in the manufacture or the control of pharmaceutical products. I have been, after 30 years in the industry, I joined PDA as the president, and I've been here now going on 12 years.
Brilliant. Thank you for that quick overview. So, as I said, you and I last spoke in July, and when we spoke in July, things were just hotting up in terms of vaccine development and looking at the research around vaccines. And when we spoke 6 months ago, we were talking about the supply chain and various other things. So looking back at 2020 now, with a little bit of hindsight now that we're into February, how would you describe 2020 if I was to ask you to describe in one word, and why?
Well, I think the best word would be disruptive. 2020 was really an unprecedented year in so many ways.
Sure.
Especially resulting from the global pandemic. And in our industry, of course, that impact has been felt in many ways. On the positive side, we've seen an unprecedented marshaling of effort by our industry to develop first diagnostics and therapies and now vaccines for this virus in a speed that just was unprecedented. I think most people know that prior to coronavirus, that the typical vaccine took, at best case, 4 to 5 years and as many as 10 years to develop. And of course, we've seen in a space of just over a year where not only one, but several vaccines have been developed, have been tested and proven to be at least somewhat effective. And of course, there's now the challenge of how do we scale up the manufacturing and distribute and then administer those doses to a worldwide population. At the same time, of course, all the other products that our industry normally supplies have also been in demand, and in fact, in some cases, have seen an increase in demand because those products that are useful in the care and treatment of people who are having this coronavirus infection, they need traditional therapies also. And so we've seen a kind of a double hit, so to speak, because there's been an increase in demand for many different types of normal products, at the same time that there's this need to come up with the capacity to manufacture billions of doses of a vaccine or vaccines in an incredibly short period of time. And so I think that there are so many disruptions whether there were disruptions in the supply chain that has caused challenges of getting raw materials, getting manufacturing materials. Those continue even to this day. And yet through it all, we've seen a tremendous progress. And I think what is very encouraging to me is not only the outstanding efforts of so many people in this regard, but also the level of cooperation, both between companies and between companies and government, that have enabled us to get, in the space of a year, to where we are starting to see, the beginning of the end, so to speak, of this situation.
So, I mean, you mentioned two things there. And one, obviously, the tremendous speed that the vaccines have been able to come onto the market, and also the impact on the supply chain. So we're, a lot of people, and we spoke about this last time, we're always going to be a bit nervous about seeing vaccines coming to the market so quickly. But what are your thoughts on that in terms of the whole regulatory process and how they have come onto the market so quickly? And also, if you don't mind, just talking a bit more about the supply chain. And because again, when we spoke last time, there was a lot of talk about people bringing supply chains in-house, if you like, in terms of manufacturing everything in-house. And I know when you spoke to me last time, you mentioned about that's unlikely to happen because we're such a global community now and everything is so interlinked. So do you think there is going to be a settling down in supply chain going forward?
Let me take the first question. I'll take the first question first. So it is true that these vaccines have been developed, with incredible speed. But it also is true that they have been evaluated extensively with incredible speed. So, I know that there are people who are hesitant about vaccines in general.
Sure.
But I think that, for those of us that know something about it, I am very confident in the safety of these vaccines. They have been subject of, unprecedented review, notwithstanding the fact that they have been developed much more quickly. The urgency of need has condensed some of those handoffs between one step and the next.
Sure.
But the steps have still been taken. And so, again, I think we are seeing, I think we have reason to have a lot of confidence in those vaccines that are receiving the emergency authorization. And there are others that hopefully will also prove to be effective as we go forward. And I would say we're in a race because the longer this virus is in circulation in the world, the greater the probability that variants
Sure.
will arise, which of course is already happening.
Yep.
And that some of these variants may prove to be more resistant to these vaccines than is currently the case. And so the best thing that we can do is to try to get as many people protected as quickly as possible, both to protect the population, but also to reduce the circulation of these viruses that might lead to the arising of a new variant that is more resistant. But I think there's a lot of hope. These products are being scaled up and manufactured. And one of the examples I could say about cooperation that's very unprecedented is we have several competitive companies agreeing to manufacture doses for their competitors in this scenario. And that's an example, I think, of what our industry is doing, recognizing that some things transcend competition and really are for the betterment of the overall good. I also think that there have been some new modalities for developing vaccines that have been part of this effort.
Yep.
that are really going to have a longer term impact. So some of these recombinant techniques for developing vaccines really could lead us to new opportunities in the future for rapid development of vaccines for other indications. As far as the supply chain goes, I think it is definitely true that there's a greater awareness of the vulnerability of our supply chain, especially as the global marketplace has shown us that as certain countries have had to react to the pandemic, that they have reduced or eliminated manufacturing or export, and resiliency of the supply chain is very much on everybody's mind, I think, now. And I think that that will continue. I do think there are many organizations that are looking at their supply chain and deciding, do they need more partners? Do they need to look for redundant suppliers and maybe look for suppliers that are not limited to one geography, so that in the future, when these kinds of situations occur, we're not quite so vulnerable. And I think that will continue. It's also, I think, stimulated new ways of thinking about how we manufacture some of these materials, both finished product and starting materials and intermediate materials, and modernizing some of that manufacturing that makes it amenable to being able to distribute the supply in ways that maybe weren't as easy to do in the past. So I think those things will continue. There will be a focus on supply chain for a long time. Some of this predates the coronavirus. This was also an issue for international trade and barriers to trade and so on. But what we've all learned is that it is a public health, if not a security issue for countries around the world to make sure that they have a capability for continuity of supply of critical medical products. And whether that's maintaining greater safety stocks or developing redundant capacities, or distributing the manufacturing into different ways that in different regions, I think we will see that continue to be a focus for the near future. This lesson has been hard learned, and I think governments and companies and individuals have learned that lesson, and I'm hopeful that we will not be soon to forget the lessons that we've learned. I already see a lot of discussion about what do we learn about this so that we're better prepared for the next pandemic. Scientifically, we know that it's just a matter of time before there is another one. So what can we learn about this scenario that can better prepare us to react in the future? And I think there's a lot of discussion by policymakers around the world talking about that right now.
Right. Well, that leads on actually quite nicely to my next question, which is, from your perspective, what do you think the positives and learnings are from 2020? I mean, you've touched on obviously collaboration and things like that, but what else do you think we can take out positively from this year, or last year, I should say now?
Well, I think that the focus on developing robust manufacturing capability has been very strong in this period. I think that will have lasting impact, because as we need to rapidly scale up capacity to make sterile products, people are not necessarily wanting to do that in the traditional way. They're wanting to do it in a much better way. And so that kind of investment has a long-term impact. I think there's a lot more focus on flexibility in our manufacturing. The days when we would put a manufacturing site together for a single product, I think we have moved to the opposite end of the pendulum on that. And that's going to give us a capacity, not just for pandemic type products, but also for other types of products that are emerging. In parallel with all of this, we've seen, of course, two other major trends. One is the development of advanced therapy medicinal products, or cell and gene therapies, or so on, which are very exciting new products, and that continues. But those are also products that have had their own challenges for how you manufacture those kinds of products. And so what I'm seeing is a certain amount of overlap between these two efforts, which are requiring to develop a much more robust manufacturing supply chain that is not heavily centralized. And at the same time, this reaction to the pandemic has brought the need for some of that same issue. So I think that's going to be a positive. The other big development and the big thing that is going on in our industry and in every industry is the use of big data.
Sure.
And so what we're seeing is, the focus on how do we capture and analyze and utilize the data that we have been spending the last 30 years figuring out ways to capture. That's going to have tremendous impacts on supply chain, on manufacturing capability, and on the way we evaluate products. So clinical trials are able to be, evaluated in ways that were not dreamt of before. New therapies can be evaluated in computer models much more efficiently than what we used to have to do by trial and error. And so I think all of these things that are fall under this overall umbrella of big data and the use of big data, the incorporation of artificial intelligence to help us pull out, the kernels of wisdom out of that. I think we're going to continue to see that be an area of focus. And we've seen that happening even before the pandemic, but certainly, we're here in a virtual environment. We're all getting more used to electronic data in ways that we weren't before.
Sure.
And that, I think, is just going to continue. At PDA, for example, we have task forces that are looking at how does this change regulatory inspections in the future. And in fact, we'll be doing a workshop in April on that subject. But regulators around the world have had to adapt to this situation. They're finding new ways to perform their mission using, the electronic tools that we have. And that's just one example of how we're going to be using e-data in new ways, and figuring out how to do that and how to make use of this data that is out there in ways that are meaningful, protecting the privacy and the security of data. You can't look at the news without seeing some aspect of that in the general news. It's going to have an impact in our industry as well. So.
Right. Well, thank you for that. So let's talk about the PDA though, because again, when we spoke 6 months ago and I asked you, how was the PDA reacting to the pandemic? You obviously talked about now working from home, looking after staff, but doing a lot more stuff digitally, and how actually a lot of your members were still looking for training, but that training was happening virtually. So how has the last 6 months been for you from a PDA organization point of view in terms of dealing with the pandemic? And also, what do you see the future hold for the PDA in terms of, this year, 2021, in terms of development?
Yeah, so clearly, in the spring of last year, we had to rapidly pivot from our traditional way of communicating with people to a completely new way of doing it. And I would say over the course of last year, as we tried that and as we did different versions of it,
Sure.
we learned more and more what works and what doesn't. And so now this year, we are applying some of that learning, and we will continue to offer, both conferences and training in a virtual setting, at least, for the first half of the year for sure. But even when we can resume face-to-face, our plan is to be hybrid, meaning that we will still be catering to a virtual audience in addition to the in-person audience. So there are a lot of things that we've done to try to make that better. It's relatively easy. Nothing's easy, but it was relatively easy to do a presentation electronically. But what we found was more challenging was the interaction and the networking. And
yeah, that's the thing every virtual event has struggled with, to be honest.
So a lot of what we have learned and what we'll be applying at our upcoming annual meeting are efforts to try to do those types of things in addition to giving very high quality content. One of the other opportunities that has arisen out of this is that because it is virtual, we're not really bounded by geography in the same way. And so one of our strategies this year is that we are planning that these events will have a global audience. And so we've adapted to have some sessions at different time zones to try to accommodate that. We have certain speakers and topics that are meant to be more interesting to people in different geographies. So that's an opportunity that has arisen as a result of this, and we're going to be trying to do that more. So many of our events this year will be not just, even if they're based out of the US team or the Europe team or the Asia Pacific team, we'll be trying to make those available and interesting and convenient for audiences in other parts of the world. And I know from talking to those people is that they're just as hungry for that kind of content as people are in any other geography. So how do we do that? That's what we're trying, and I would say we're continuing to be in a learning mode. We will try something, we'll see how it works. We can make adjustments, and we need to be striving for continuous improvement. On the training side, as you say, we are doing a lot of training now. Clearly, the part that we have not been able to do is the traditional hands-on part, and we are hoping that, as the pandemic situation improves, we may resume some of that later this year. But what we have also been doing is trying to create some hands-on component with our virtual learning. And so we're doing a lot of training in cooperation with the US FDA. And part of that is doing topics that are our traditional aseptic processing, environmental monitoring. And so we send out kits to the students, and they will do touch plates, and they will do certain things with material that we send to them to try to bridge a little bit of that gap. We also are in the process of implementing a new platform for e-learning, which will allow us to offer 100% computer-based training using the knowledge and the experience that we have, which has not been a capability that we've had. So we're in the process of setting that system up, and later this year we will roll it out, and we will then have some pure computer-based training that is on demand when people need it. So again, we have to try to learn from the situations, but all of these things I'm mentioning were to some extent in our plan anyway, but we've had to bring a lot of that forward much more rapidly than what we had originally anticipated. So this year is going to be a very busy year for us. On the scientific side, this is going to be as busy as any period we've had. We are anticipating several new standards to be published this year.
Right.
In addition to our technical reports. Right now, I think, we have, in the first half of the year, we may have as many as 6 or 7 technical documents that will be published, which of course have been being worked on over the past period. And we have a full complement of those kinds of activities going on. So, our members, our volunteers continue to be as engaged with PDA as they ever have been. And we are utilizing their efforts to try to bring, advancements in the body of knowledge that people have come to expect from PDA.
Fantastic. Well, obviously it's very busy, but as you quite rightly said, I think the whole pandemic situation has made everyone accelerate their digitalization, for want of a better term, faster than they would have previously planned, which is not necessarily a bad thing, and it's obviously created more opportunities than perhaps people would have otherwise thought. So final chance, Richard, to give you a quick plug about the event. When is the annual meeting? And what can people expect to gain from it if they attend this year?
So the annual meeting is coming up in mid-March. It's on our website. The agenda is posted. I was just looking at my notes here. The theme for this year's annual meeting is advancing people, connecting data, and evolving manufacturing technologies. So you can see from some of the comments that I shared with you earlier that this is very much in concert with what we're seeing and what we're doing. There will be topics that are very focused on how we, evolve our manufacturing. A number of discussions about Annex 1 and new regulatory expectations related to sterile manufacturing, but also big data and how do we use data in different ways. So I think that there will be a lot of topics on those subjects that will be very timely for people to be aware of. In addition, we will be providing a platform for technology providers to also share what they are doing. So we've incorporated some tech talks from technology providers. We have networking sessions because, of course, we know that people gain a lot from these events from interacting with each other.
Sure.
And so we are creating those kinds of opportunities for people as well. And so I think that will make it a very worthwhile effort. And one of the positive things that this platform and this way of doing things is all of the people who register will also be able to look at these presentations and the recordings of the interactions at their leisure. So, you know, in a normal meeting, you can only go to so many things at the same time.
Definitely, yeah.
And now you will be able to decide, okay, you know, I can't do it today, but tomorrow I can look at that, or next week I can look at that. So that's an opportunity to really gain, you know, the learning from all of the sessions that have not traditionally been as easy to do in a traditional setting. And we will be doing that, you know, going forward. That's a new way of doing things. So, you know, I would encourage people, you know, none of us have unlimited time. We're all multitasking and trying to do things. But again, by participating in our event, you will not only be able to see the events as they happen, but you'll also be able to see them after the fact for a period of time. And when that gives you the flexibility to use your time more judiciously. So.
Brilliant. Well, I'll put the link up for the event above the video as well so people can see it. So Richard, one final question then. What message would you like to leave everybody as your final word then for this year?
So, you know, I have to comment on the fact that our whole world has been faced with an unprecedented challenge. And, you know, our first thoughts should always go to the people who've been affected by this terrible pandemic. And to the people who have been working to try to mitigate that. And I include in that group many of our members, people who work in this industry. What they are doing has in significant part helped to address the challenges of this situation. So I think from that, I would say to everybody that's involved in whatever way, big or small, you should be proud of what you're doing, and you should be even more dedicated and determined to continue that effort. You know, this is a situation that it's only going to be through the efforts of people in the science and in the industry and in the regulators that work in this. Is the only way through this. And I think we can all be proud of the fact that in one way or another, we have contributed to that. And I personally want to applaud all of those people and thank them for their efforts.
Well said. Right. Thank you very much for that, Richard. Well, all that's left for me to say is, Richard, I appreciate taking the time out to talk to me today. I know you're very busy with lots going on. So thank you for taking time out and sharing your thoughts with me. I wish you, your loved ones, and everyone associated with PDA lots of good health, success for 2021. I look forward to hopefully seeing you in the future, in the not too distant future as well. And I wish everyone who's watching the same. And if you've got any questions for Richard, please feel free to put any comments below. And I know Richard said this in the last video, so I'll put it again. He'll be happy for you to contact him directly as well, either through LinkedIn. I'll put his email address on there as well. And I'll also put the link to the last video we did 6 months ago, so you can see how things have changed above this video as well. So all that information and the link to the annual conference will be above the video, so you can find out more about the event and register as well if you're interested. So
I hope that when we do the next one in 6 months, that we'll have a much more rosy picture about the pandemic by that time.
Well, it has got better since we last spoke. When we last spoke, there was no vaccines. Now we've got several. So all things are moving in the right direction, hopefully, Richard. Yes. So I appreciate taking time to talk to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you as well, Richard. And as I said, I'll see you all soon, hopefully. Until next time, stay safe and stay well. Bye-bye.